It's basically 33 years of blood, sweat, and ink on my hands.
Lounging, son.
All right, welcome back to the Comic Lounge. My name's Ryan, and with me today, I don't have one, I don't have two, I have three guests with me. And we're here to talk about Filth Grammar, Shelly Bond's memoir about editing in comic books. And I've been waiting for this book for a very long time. So I'm very excited that it's live on Kickstarter. So I wanted to have everybody on the show, the whole creative team, minus Sophie Dodson, the colorist, who's not here with us. So we can talk about the project. So everybody real quick, introduce yourselves and we'll start talking the project.
So I'm Imogen Mangle. I only just graduated from illustration at university a year ago. I've been trying to make comics ever since, which for a certain reason, we've all been home a lot. So that's been helpful. But suddenly, randomly, I got really, really lucky and picked up by Shelly. So like fresh out of uni, I'm working on possibly the best project ever. That's basically where I'm at.
Whoa, talk about knowing how to kiss bud. Video. I love it. They teach you a lot at art school these days.
Can be a little sycophantic, but Shelly always gets me back. She always makes me blush so hard I feel like I'm gonna die. So it's a little competition.
Just another editor's trick.
I'm Laura Hole. I went to the same uni as Imogen. I think I was 2 years above her.
I think so.
Yeah, I think so. And so I graduated 4 years ago. And since then, I've been making my own comics and self-publishing and just doing some freelance work as well. And yeah, Shelly picked me up last year for Insider Art. And I did a little 2-page how to make a zine kind of thing. And then I worked on the back cover of Heavy Rotation. Aha, there we go. Shelly's got props. Yeah, that was good fun. That was a lot of fun. And that's me. Thank you.
And
my favorite person in comic books. Introduce yourself
again, someone else totally kissing up.
I know how to do it well.
Motive. I know Ryan wants to edit comics, and I know he will. And I know he's going to be an awesome editor. So I'll say that. But I'm also going to clarify something. Right from the get-go, I'm going to start editing. But it must be said that the reason that this team got together is Sophie Dodgson's fault. And she's not here tonight, unfortunately. She was going to join us, but she couldn't make it. But she is the reason that comics are great again. And I say that with love because Sophie, as you know, Ryan, is the colorist on Bitterroot. I think Sophie should win an Eisner Award for best person in comics right now, because I think she has been a cyclone of talent, not just coloring comics, but she's a graphic designer and an art director too. She's a costume designer. She's sort of like this Jill of all trades. Now, Sophie helped me out last summer with Insider Art, which I know, Ryan, you were also familiar with that book. And you actually got a copy for your daughter, if I recall. So Sophie's section in Insider Art was the craft room. And in the craft room, she hired Laura, as Laura mentioned. And just strangely enough, when I was working on Heavy Rotation, of course, I wanted Laura to work on the back cover. Sophie was intending to do an illustration. So again, in addition to being a colorist, she actually is also an artist. She also ran into some deadline snags with another project. And I respect it so much about her that she fessed up. And she said, look, I can't finish this job, but I know someone who can. Guess who that was? I'll give you a hint. That person is not Laura, but she's here on the podcast.
See, Laura actually deserves the credit for bringing me in on this one, because even though Sophie needed someone to help her meet the deadline, I'm only here on Laura's recommendation. So it's a real chain.
Nice. And that to me exemplifies the art of collaboration. It's community, it's working with like-minded people, and it's respect. And it's meeting the bloody deadline or you're fired, which is my catchphrase. And I know, I see Imogen is already sweating.
every day. I'm always this close. It's dangerous, a dangerous game. So the kissing up sort of hopefully will help me a bit.
Not really, but the Clash albums helped. I want Jen to explain the story, but she was hired based on her talent, full stop. I predict she's going to be the next art star, but there was another reason. There were two other reasons why she was hired for Filth and Grammar, and I'm going to let her tell you both of those reasons.
Okay, so the big reason, which probably will become really, really apparent throughout this throughout this podcast, is that Shelly and I both very much enjoy The Clash. And I was saying to my partner the other night, because Shelly and Laura were just on another podcast, that everything that comes out of Shelly's mouth is either pure gold or just like enjoying The Clash.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure what the other reason is, so you'll have to remind me.
Okay, guilty as charged. I can't help it. I do worship the religion of Strummer. The other reason, I'll give you a hint, it involves 5-inch platforms.
Oh my God, it's the fashion. Oh, you can't help it.
No, it's not.
True.
It's your height.
It's because we're tiny, but so we are both tiny, the smallest, tiny little women in comics. Shelly is 5'2" and I'm 5'1", but as a result, we do both wear platform shoes almost exclusively, and it's true style, if I'm completely honest.
It's true style, and just to add a little bit of context here, there were many years when I was hiring assistants in comics that people accused me of hiring people who were shorter than me. I deny it, although I can count 3 assistant editors who were in fact shorter, but I still will deny it. What was that, Laura?
I said, were they children?
Very funny. Okay.
Sorry.
Laura has been teasing us.
Bully.
Anyway, she does it in her art as well. Ryan, we're going to make sure that you get a graphic to show of the very first assignment I gave both Jen and Laura, which was to do a turnaround sheet. Do you know what a turnaround sheet is, Ryan?
Yeah, it's like the character or whoever writing the book, you see all angles, right? Turn around of them.
Yep. And it's not just all angles, it's also different expressions. It's one full figure shot, and it's the time for you to designate a prop or two that really gives the visual identity to the character. So it's all of those things. And Laura took it upon herself to not only draw Shelly, the reluctant protagonist, with a red pen and in platforms and with a little Filth and Grammar bag, but she drew a height chart and said, you have to be this tall to edit comics. And for about 3 days, I regretted my decision to hire her.
You should have just fired me.
Said 3 days. It was 3 days, but I always say to people, when you're an editor, go with your instinct, but then also, take a step back. Like, let some time pass, put on Sandinista, clean your house, come back to it. And I realized that she was just kidding. And if she's not just kidding, she'll be fired after this podcast.
All right, well, let's talk the project. Like I said, you told me that you had the idea for the book, I think all the way back when you did Hey Amateur. I believe you told me back then. I could be completely wrong, or maybe it was Insider Art when we chatted.
Oh, listen, I've been working on this book for 33 years, since
Right.
1988.
So you've been teasing it, at least to me. I don't know who else. I'm sure there's other people that know it, but I have been waiting for it to drop, and then you finally just came out of nowhere, and I was so fucking stoked about it. So I want to hear, for everyone listening and watching that maybe hasn't backed the project yet or isn't familiar, if you could just share a little bit about what the project is about. And you just touched on it. You've been working on it for a very long time. So
Filth and Grammar, for me, is my magnum opus. I've been in comics for 33 years. I worked for an indie company as an editorial assistant. I worked for DC Comics for their Vertigo line for 22 and a half years. I worked, I pitched and ran Black Crown for IDW for 3.5 years with my husband, Philip. where we really learned how to produce comics. Philip has been a cartoonist and comic book artist for over 30 years. Black Crown gave us the opportunity to start really getting our hands dirty with making comics, scanning, art, lettering, design, etc. So it's basically 33 years of blood, sweat, and ink on my hands. And it's the pro tips that I gleaned from some of my favorite writers and artists in comics who happen to be some superstars, who, by the way, only a handful of them have big egos. So you can be guaranteed that any tips of the trade that I get from people like Neil Gaiman, Peter Milligan, Mike Allred, Laura Allred, Mike Carey, Peter Gross, they're fantastic people. And I picked up a lot of things from them along the way, and I really want to share it with everybody.
I know it's like a memoir, but you also said there's tips and stuff on like how to edit. So is it a full memoir? Is it like a straight like graphic novel, or is there moments of prose? What else can we expect in terms of like the content, you know, that we're going to see?
Sure. Basically, the whole book is broken down into 10 chapters, and it's process. Each chapter focuses on a different part of the comic book craft. So it starts with the idea. You know, everybody has an idea. That's nothing new, but how do you make it a great idea? How do you make it something so original that someone's not going to say, oh yeah, I saw that on Netflix, or oh yeah, Steve Ditko did that in Shade back in the 60s. So it's taking that spark of an idea and finding a way to make it wholly and uniquely your own. So we go from that through the entire process of plot, script, turnaround figures, pencils, inks, layouts, ballooning, logo design, color, how much is too much color, how not to forget that white and black are colors, and really not only putting it all together, but pitching it. And also I imbue some tips that I learned along the way about dealing with difficult people. So it's not only process how to make your own comics better, how to make your own comics amazing, but it's the stuff they don't teach you in art school. It's knowing how to pick and choose your battles when you're working for a large company or when you're working as part of a team. Because the best part about making comics is that it's collaborative and you've got community. And sometimes people don't get along. So the editor's job, first and foremost, is to make sure that everybody on the team is doing their best work. And that only happens when everybody feels comfortable and everybody trusts each other and everybody knows what the hell they're doing and when the deadline is. I mean, that's ultimately, you know, these tips are for making comics, but they're also life goals. I think this book is good for people who just want to, you know, perhaps start a new career or even just become a more enlightened reader. Because I think once you read this book, you're going to realize that comics are not just about reading from left to right, top to bottom. It's much more than that. You know, when you're putting a comic together, you've got to make some serious decisions. You have to figure out what to say, what to show, what to leave in the panel gutters. You know, Eisner has such wonderful teachings about that, the blood in the gutters. And if there's one thing I love to stress, it's like repetition kills, and making those choices is the critical part of making great comics. So I'm going to show you the ropes.
I'm very excited. Do you talk about specific times in your career too? Like, do you go into like Comico, where you worked with Diana Schutz, Vertigo with Karen Berger, all stuff like that? Because that's what I'm really excited for.
Oh yeah, I do. In fact, in addition to these 10 chapters that pretty much go into the how-to, and Laura is going to be the illustrator of those chapters. So she's going to be sort of helping us show and tell in a fun way, because there's nothing I hate more than like tutorials that pander or that just look stupid. So I hired Laura so that I wouldn't look stupid. Now, Laura, okay, I just want to say, I hope you aren't going to make me look stupid, or I'm going to have to fire you again. So in balancing a book on craft, which essentially this is. I'm going to be sharing some secret histories and some experiences that I've had over the years. And in fact, Jen is going to be illustrating the sequential stories that are the preludes to each chapter. So for chapter 2 on the script autopsy, she's going to be illustrating a really hilarious story about something that happened to me in my early days at the Vertigo office. And throughout the book, you're going to get snippets of what it was like to be an ingenue editor in the 90s. And also, you know, through my latter years, some things that I picked up that I think are really, you know, were real eureka moments for me as an editor. And they happen all the time because comics are so organic, as you guys know, and so many things change. And in fact, another thing I just want to impart is that the book is also a how-to for me, because I think both Imogen and Laura are going to teach me a thing or two. And I'm going to shoot it right to Laura because she is like the champion of the zine. And she's going to tell you not only what she's going to bring to the book, but also she's going to reveal a stretch goal.
Yes, let's hear it.
Okay, so I'm going to be doing a little zine that will be, I think it's the 75,000 stretch goal. Am I right?
It is.
Yes.
It is.
And it's going to be, as far as I know, it's going to be similar to my piece in Insider Art. So it's going to be a single sheet, you know, where you fold it in the right way and it makes like a little 8-page zine. So that will be part of the package. And that will be for people who have backed any of the physical copies.
Hell yeah. I've been like, I've gotten into zines over the past like year. And I mean, you sent me a couple of your things, like, because I had reached out, because I reached out to you because I wanted to do an interview with you before I knew we were all going to be chatting together. So yeah, I'm very stoked to be able to talk to you again. But I love zines. I love the grassroots of it, like somebody just like creating something by themselves, getting it printed, and then like just getting it out there. So I'm very excited that you're doing that.
Okay, say it's punk. Come on.
Okay, it's punk.
It is so punk rock. Look, truth be told, look, I'm an indie girl at heart. So like part of my love for comics goes back to Punk Magazine and Fumetti, and how back in the 70s, like John Holstrom was friends with Debbie Harry and Chris Stein and the Ramones and put them in Punk Magazine. I mean, that to me was the ultimate in DIY comics. So it's a salute to that. And I think that's just the coolest thing ever.
Yeah, I think I have to say, like, kind of like what you did with Hey Amateur, you did it with Insider Art. You just keep introducing me to new, awesome creatives, you know, and you're doing it again with this project with Imogen. And I'm just so stoked for the response to this I mean, I know you were blown away, but my God, how quickly it got backed. I was just so shocked.
I know. And I have to say, you know, it's all about the art. I think Laura and Imogen working together is magic. And I'm going to just backtrack for a second because Jen is the web comics maestro of the group. So tell us a little bit about your experience with web comics and explain to everybody how much I don't know and how much you're going to teach me.
Basically, I've been reading webcomics for about 10 years because I've never had that much of like disposable income or pocket money when I was a kid. And I've always like loved and still love, like deep in my core, indie comics are my true favorite. And the most indie of indie comics are the ones that you can find online. So for about 10 years, I've been reading them. And for about 5 years, I've been trying to do them with varying degrees of success. So as far as I know, Shelly doesn't read any webcomics. And if I talk about the scrolling format, she's not even gonna know what I mean.
Au contraire, I've read your comics.
Oh,
Your webcomic, which I think is amazing.
You've been misled by my comics because, but hey, Thank you. First of all, thank you. But my comics are comics that I put online. They're not necessarily webcomics, because every single thing that I make with the intention of putting it to print. Whereas many webcomics, especially the really, really big ones that are made by like fully like funded teams, are made not to go on books, but to like work to be readable in browsers. So you scroll through them, and instead of getting pages as we're accustomed to, you get episodes where it's just like mostly vertical panels on top of each other and like spaces between them to like indicate pacing as you're scrolling. Oh, it's a whole thing. I can show you the world, Shelly. I can take you there.
I am so excited. As long as there's a Clash soundtrack, we're going to be good.
Yes, some comics have soundtracks, web comics. You can just embed audio into the page, so like it's a thing.
Wow.
Well, when I say
That's
soundtrack, I
actually really
mean
cool.
in air quotes. I mean air quotes because I don't think we are going to be able to afford an official soundtrack for Filth Grammar. However, we did start a Spotify list just today. And I don't think Jen actually caught on. Jen was probably too busy working on the latest deadline because she's been doing some art this morning. But I know Laura was slacking off because she actually contributed a few songs.
Yes, terrible slacker.
What did you contribute, Laura?
I
In
contributed.
case you didn't know, Ryan, the name of the first Filth and Grammar official Spotify playlist is, okay, let me think. It's music for obliterating typos and tangents.
I
Laura.
already added it to my playlist on Spotify.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
All right, so Laura, what were your contributions? There was a good one in there.
Papillon by Editors, and I'll Be Your Mirror by the Velvet Underground. My voice went weird. The Velvet Underground.
We have to explain to Ryan how you had me at Nico's Fringe.
I did a like a little portrait of the Velvet Underground because I love them very much, and that was just a little fun. It kind of started as a warm-up drawing, and then I got really into it, and I rendered it, and then I put it on the internet, and I think Sophie showed that one to Shelly, and that's how I got hired.
Yep, it was as simple as that. Once again, Sophie is responsible for this project, kind of, but definitely mostly. I think what's exciting when you're working with new people is to see how they're going to work together, and not just, hey, we're chatting on a podcast, it's going to be fun. But I've told, when I hired both Laura and Imogen, at first I didn't know that they actually knew each other, that they went to art school at the same place. And I just looked at their art and I thought that they would actually really be cool if they did a role reversal. So I always had this evil scheme that I was going to have Jen do roughs and Laura do finishes and vice versa. But unlike my contemporaries in comics, who were kind of used to working with inkers and, you know, usually going from penciler to inker to a colorist is like different people in the chain. So many young cartoonists are doing everything themselves. And I think that's great, but I also think it's really important to celebrate the collaborative aspect of comics. And so I pretty much hired them knowing that they would get to do their own work, but then they would also have to be legit okay with trying their hand at like destroying each other's art. And so our first attempt, I gotta say, blew my mind. It blew my tiny mind. Jen, tell Ryan about the creation piece.
So after one of our weekly or sometimes twice weekly Zoom calls, I had felt inspired to do a silly little drawing, like pastiche of the creation of Adam, in which Shelley takes the position of God, and us three, myself, Sophie and Laura, were, you know, like reaching for her hand, but she's got the pen in her hand and is passing it down to us. I did it in like the loosest way possible, like the most scribbly little rough ever, and just like emailed it off to Shelley like I just thought this was funny. I hope it's not too heretical. Hee hee hee. And she sort of looked at it and like didn't understand what I'd sent her and then like ignored it. And it was only later when I put it in our like secret group chat that we the artists have. And the other two brought it back up that Shelly like realized what I'd done and encouraged us to like go through with it. So Laura picked up the slack from there. I mean, she did ask me to clean up my roughs a bit, which was fair because they were heinous. But Laura, if you want to talk about finishing it.
Yeah, well, I think you missed out an important point. You put it into the group chat, and then Sophie and I didn't see it for a day or two. So I think Jen just thought everyone was ignoring this beautiful.
Everyone hated it.
It was so it's so perfect. And Jen did a fantastic job with the roughs, and they were so dreamy to ink over and to color. It just like it really, when you're doing a piece of work and it just like lights up little bits in your brain and you're just like, yes, that was how it felt doing that. Thank you, Jen.
Laura, you warm my heart every day.
Oh.
I think it's really evident in the final piece, to be honest. I mean, the way that Laura put little accents, not just on the characters of us, but on the cherubs with the little circle cheeks.
Oh, yeah. They were so fun.
There's so much nuance in the piece, and there's so much of not just a cheeky parody, but a camaraderie. Like you can see the team click already. But I do have to like state my situation here. When I first received the rough from Jen, it had images on it, but it was very rough. I'm not used to looking at her roughs and studying them. So I honestly had no idea what she was sending me and why, but I saw I looked at it and I thought she was actually replying to something I had asked her to draw. So instead of looking at it like, Jen is a genius. This is such a great parody of Michelangelo's, the most famous piece ever parodied in art history. I looked at it and I thought, is this really Jen's answer to serial and can it kill you? That's all I gleaned from those roughs. I thought, oh my God, I think she has no idea what I mean. I'm in big trouble. So that's
really wanted to get rid of me there and then, like, I don't understand anything I'm asking her for.
Kinda did.
And is this the first time that Laura and Jen, is this the first time you guys have done that kind of work where you're doing roughs or inking over other people?
Yeah. Shall I? What?
After you.
Okay. So what I was going to say is we had big plans to do a comic together because we're great friends and I think our styles work really well together. Mm-hmm. And last year, in 2020, the year of the plague, we sort of teamed up and actually made a big plan for a comic and wrote it all out and everything, so that we could apply to table at LCAF together, the East London Comic Arts Festival. Mm-hmm. And we ended up not getting in, but it's worked out perfectly fine because it didn't go ahead anyway, and now we get to work with each other.
Yay.
Great.
Yay. Yay.
I mean, does this make you guys like more amped now to do that project on your own?
I think so. Yeah.
Hey, wait. Not until the end of the
not until Filth and Grammar is over.
Not distract these people, okay? I finally got them on the straight and narrow. You're distracting them.
I can't help it. When you show me good artists, I want more work. So that's where I'm at,
You will get plenty of grammar.
And Jen, just Laura's got a stretch goal. Maybe you do a stretch goal and print out your webcomics. Just a thought. Just putting it out there. Whatever.
Well, that's an intriguing idea, but Jen came up with like so many great ideas for stretch goals. She has a sticker sheet, which is just, I mean, it's worth the price of the entire package. If your Filth and Grammar soft cover gets lost in the mail, but you get your sticker sheet, it's worth the cover price. That's all.
Do you see this flattery? I can't believe I'm the one who's accused of like kissing ass. Come on.
It's the balance we're looking for. But I want one of you to reveal to Ryan what happened this morning. You know, we're sort of at the final stage of determining what's going to be in the infamous Bondian expected, you know it, you love it, swag bag.
No.
So this is the one for heavy rotation. I mean, every time I design a swag bag, it's got to be just like, as Laura would say, chef's kiss, right? Am I doing that right? All right.
Yeah.
Well, so we've got everything but one of the badges. And this morning, it was Sophie. Sophie saved the day. Jen, tell Ryan what happened.
Well, just first up, Sophie did say to say hi for her. So Sophie says hi.
Tell her I said hello when you talk to her.
But it was amazing. We'd been struggling to figure out like what is the last badge for ages, and also like how do we incorporate the logo into our swag bag? Like, should it be a magnet? Should we do this or that with it? And it was us in our naughty little like artist group chat, and Sophie said in there that all she wanted was a badge that just said filth on it, and we went nuts. We were loving it.
It's
So
perfect.
she was Shelly, and she put together this like excellent, hilarious little portfolio of suggestions for how the badge should look. Just the badge with filth, and then she had it on Keanu Reeves. Laura, who else did she have it on?
Miriam Margolyes.
Murder, She Wrote.
Oh yes, Jessica Fletcher. That's not her real name. Angela Lansbury.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, that's the badger. Yes, and it was Miriam Margolyes as well, who's ultimate babe. Yeah, very good.
And I think that the thing that's always tricky with badges, as you can see from the heavy rotation badges, I like to do the logo if possible, and it's really hard. You're talking a 1-inch button. I'm a fan of the 1-inch button. It's tradition. I mean, sometimes we have buttons that are a little bit larger, but I like the swag bags to be classic. So getting the logo small is rough, but also we want like a really graphic, iconic image that's universal. So I think we have it with Filth, because if you don't want to wear it yourself, you can you can put it on some guy's like bucket hat, like someone you hate, just like slap it on the back of their bucket. Right? Or like on their lapel, underneath their lapel when they're not looking. Because like really, there are a lot of really horrible people out there. So this is a way to tag them, I guess.
You can stab them with the pin.
That's true. There's that as well.
So Shelly, I want to ask you, and then I want to talk about the art again. What does it feel like to finally like kind of, it's not out in the world, but it's being done. It's finally being done. Like, what is the feeling for you and seeing that response almost immediate? I mean, I've watched the last couple of Kickstarters and they did not hit that. I mean, they hit their goal, but it wasn't like first day, then a few hours, like the thing was there. You're already on stretch goals. I think you hit the 50,000 or you're almost at the 50,000.
Now we obliterated it a few days ago.
Okay.
Seriously, this is how I felt. I am astonished and just blown to bits, just grateful. You know, I feel really lucky. You know, I spent my entire life devoted to comics since I graduated from college in 1988, and I worked in comics. And I feel lucky that even when I came in during that late 80s boom in comics, there weren't a whole lot of women in the field, but everybody was so welcoming. And I was just like this kid out of film school. So I had a lot of dumb questions to ask. And people were so kind to me along the way. And I came of age with some of the greatest people in comics. Ryan, as you know, Mike Allred, he was my first friend in comics, basically because I had to send him a rejection letter. We bonded over Bowie. I don't know if Jen and Lauren know the story, but I'll tell them to listen to another podcast. But I came up with so many great people and who became great friends. And I feel like we've all supported each other. And then there were people like Neil Gaiman along the way who, you know, I worked with him from day one at Vertigo. I met him on the first day on the job. And he was the most gracious, kind, respectful person I had met. You know, he never thought a question that I had was stupid. He thanked me for every little thing I did as an assistant editor, all the way up through when I was his full editor on the Sandman Overture. Treating people that way, no matter who they are, no matter how big they get, what their title is, how famous they are, that's talent to me. And so, you know, a part of the book is sharing what I learned, also sharing what I didn't absorb, because I witnessed a lot of bad behavior in comics from men and women, from people in the industry and from people outside of the industry. So, you know, I'm putting it all on the table, and I am just thrilled that people want to hear from me because, you know, I was behind the scenes, and I think a lot of people don't realize how integral the editor's job is. You know, editors don't get a ton of credit, and yet you see their name in the credits. I like to think that with my books, I didn't just bring my love for sequential storytelling to the table, but I brought my love for music, for film, for graphic design, for 60s pop, for 70s punk, for the Strummer Mohawk. You know, all you have to do is look at the Hellblazer covers that Simon Bisley painted on the Hellblazer run with Milligan and Giuseppe Camuncoli. You know, I was the editor from issue 252 to 300. And if you don't see that in those issues of Hellblazer, then you really don't know my work, because I'd like to think that everything I've edited has the Bond imprimatur. And to me, it's just, it's urgency, it's a reverence, it's panache, and it's just a balls up, fearless attitude. Like, this is what I want to read. This is who I am. If you want to pick it up, great, join us. If you don't, that's okay. There are other comics out there for you. But if you want to like get into what I'm into, just, you know, it's here and it's here. So yeah, blown away and thrilled and grateful that I've been able to accrue such a wonderful Kickstarter family to help build the book.
Yeah, I mean, I've often said that I don't think editors get as much shine as they should. And I've said that for a long time. Like, your name and Karen Berger's name were two of the names that like I first noticed because I just loved Vertigo from like a very young age, you know? And you can tell when a book is not edited well, and there's a lot of it out there, you know? I mean, there is a ton of it out there, and it just, there's no cohesiveness, there's no vision, it seems like sometimes, behind the books. Yeah. And it's evident, and it's cool to see a project like this where it's about editing get so much like spotlight and so much shine and like success in so early in the Kickstarter. And I'm just so happy for you, and like I cannot wait to have that book in my hands.
Well, first of all, thank you. Second of all, thank you again. Third of all, thanks for the publicity. I mean, you have been such a supporter of my work for years, and of comics. And that helps. You know, when you go from working for a large or an indie company as a day job, and you get that, you know, weekly paycheck, it's one thing. But I've been freelance editing for the past few years, and, you know, it's unknown territory. So even though I've been married to a freelancer, you know, for 22 years, so I get it, you know, I know what that life is like, you know, of kind of like working week to week for a paycheck. You know, it is the Wild West right now, and Kickstarter is one of the most viable platforms for self-publishers. And because of that, it's amazing because you can express yourself, and you can, you know, amass a small or a large group of followers and raise money. But also you do see a lot of random stuff. And when I look around, I always say to myself, God, I wish I could get my hands on this person's writing, this person's art, this colorist's, you know, not that I want to just go around editing people and throwing red ink at them, but you know, it's in my bones. It's been my occupation for most of my life. So I felt like it was necessary for somebody to create an editor's handbook. And I didn't want it to be anyone else. So I knew I had to do it soon. So that's why really, when I saw Laura and Jen, when I saw their artwork, it sealed the deal for me, because I knew I didn't want it to just be, oh, here's a book and it features some of my old friends or colleagues who owe me a favor in comics. Like, there's a little bit of that, of course, you know, like people like you, I'm sure you're going to want to know, like, that Grant Morrison is going to be giving me a pro tip, and he's like so cool. And you and I have talked about the Doom Patrol. I mean, talk about a masterclass of comic storytelling. You know, there's no single issue like a Grant Morrison single issue from the Doom Patrol. If you're going to read one comic and you're going to follow the advice that you glean from one comic, it's that run. It's the Morrison case run. But for a book on editing comics, I really wanted to work with people from the new generation of comic stars, because in addition to like working with, like, you know, people who I adore from my own generation and even people a little bit older than me, I love this incredible burgeoning art scene that's happening. And a lot of it's coming out of the UK. And I think Laura and Jen and Sophie are at the forefront of that. So that's exciting to me too. So it's not just about, oh, hey, you know, in the 90s, here's your Britpop soundtrack. It's also Laura and Jen and Sophie kicking it up with me on this great book.
Yeah, I love the art. I think the art is so eye-catching too, like just from like the way you're drawn, Shelly. I just, you know, it's inviting. It makes you want the book even more, you know. And I mean, like, obviously, like, you both are very talented artists, but it's cool to see, you know, Shelly, you, like I said, like, I keep discovering people because of you. So those books aren't like that. I said it's not a how-to, it's a who's who, right? Like the books that you're putting together. I keep discovering people, and it's people I wouldn't have discovered if not for you having them on the book.
Well, and that's editing and that's curating. And I know that you realize that, because you and I have talked many times and you've helped me with so many projects. I think that's another of the editor's bag of tricks. You know, when I worked at DC, I'm not going to name names, but there were a lot of people at that company who teased me for being a frustrated art director. And I might have like tee-heed with them, but I didn't think it was funny, because I came to DC Comics with a degree in film and audio and video production. I did a lot of editing. I did film splicing. I did videotape. I did audio tape. I was a DJ. I took every art class and art history class I could. So I did 3D design. I did, you know, obviously I can't draw well, but I took anatomy classes. I took sculpture classes. So when I came to DC, for me, it wasn't about just the writers, or it wasn't about, oh, I have an English degree. I did not. I came with a visual acuity of someone who really went to film school because I wanted to be a film director. You know, I wanted to make films, but when I discovered comics in my screenwriting class in the fall of '87, something really magical happened. I discovered that these were like mini films. And not only that, they were easier to make. They were more immediate, and I could actually have more control over them. But clearly I couldn't control the sneeze. That just made
sorry, I couldn't help it. I had to laugh.
That was Philip Bond, cover artist of Filth and Grammar,
making his debut.
and in my family, sneezing on the truth. So there you have it.
All right, well, I want to talk about art, because like I said, I'm really digging the art that you guys are doing on there, and I want to know what the experience has been like working with Shelly, who has, I mean, she just named a bunch of like heavy hitters in comic books that she's worked with, and you two are the latest in that line. So what's the experience been like for you guys?
It's big boots to fill, but Shelly has been so kind and gracious and stabby. No, thankfully she lives a few thousand miles away. No, she's been great. And I think it's worth noting that I think both myself and Imogen have not been edited before.
Yeah. We we like studied in the same town. Laura is from here. I've been living here for 4 years, and we have 2 universities here that both do illustration degrees. So there is a huge comics scene in the town where we live, but it is all indie. Like, we all just make like zine-like comics. Basically, nobody is making comics longer than 30 pages, and we all just sell them at art fairs. It is so...
To each other.
Yeah, to each other. And so, yeah, not only have we never been edited before, but it's so like alien to the culture of where we're from and like the town that we're from and where we studied. So yeah, working with Shelly, she doesn't condescend to us ever. You know, she really treats us like professionals, but she also understands that we've never really done this process before. She's just really clear with us sometimes. She clarifies stuff for us.
Whoa. Did you say sometimes?
Oh. Imogen's getting fired.
Bye guys, it's been great.
I forgot where we left off, to be honest, too. I don't remember what we were talking about.
Jen was calling me on the carpet for not being clear, so I wanted to
right.
Oh yeah.
That's right.
qualify.
Shelly didn't forget.
Shelly doesn't forget anything, by the way. I still want to know why I'm not allowed on that Discord channel, that private Google Chats room. Like, what is up with that? And why? I mean, seriously, I'm kind of hurt.
Our secret little Facebook chat that we have.
Yeah. Anyway, I think what I was gonna say is one of the greatest things I learned about editing, I learned from a Vertigo editor who was named Lou Stathis, who isn't talked about much in comic circles, but he was one of the best editors that Karen Berger ever hired. I think if I was going to give my old boss Karen props, the greatest thing she did was she hired a terrific variety of editors. She didn't just hire people that were into comics. She hired people who came from other areas of study. So she hired Stuart Moore, who was a book editor, who was very into sci-fi comics and had his own sci-fi line called Helix for a little while. He went on to become a comics writer and a novelist. She hired Tom Peyer, who was a political cartoonist, who was also into comics, but terrific guy. He was my first office mate, so I have a funny story about him that Jen is drawing. But Lou Stathis was not only a magazine editor at High Times. He edited indie comics. He was Ted McKeever's editor for a while at Vortex and Black Kiss. He worked with Chaykin. But he ran a music magazine, and he was so smart, like IQ of 180. He was my neighbor for a few years at Vertigo. And he taught me one of the greatest things, which is don't put your fingerprints on everything. Sometimes you got to take a step back. And I think that can be a big mistake in editing when you feel like you have to always put a mark on the page so people think you're doing your job. And sometimes the best thing you can do is let it ride. If somebody is drawing something and you see a bad arm, no offense, Jen, just kidding. Maybe you'll correct it later in the process. But if you correct it too soon, it gets people nervous. And sometimes you don't need to make a correction at all. And I say this truthfully with love. I think Laura and Jen are both innately gifted artists and storytellers. So it's really amazing to work with them on this project. I'm going to call them out on the carpet when they mess up, and I'm going to congratulate them and cheer them on when they do really well. But I do think that there's a lot to be said about trusting your instincts as an editor and knowing when to enthuse and knowing when to, wield the red pen of doom.
I also want, I'm kind of curious too, because like we're living in a completely different age in terms of like with, technology now, right? Like I've often heard of, like speaking of Vertigo, Swamp Thing with Alan Moore, Steve Bissett, John Toddleben and stuff, and how like you're mailing stuff, you're writing letters, you're faxing stuff. That's not the case anymore. Now you can jump on a Zoom and talk with the entire creative team at one time. So I was wondering, like, I haven't thought about asking this to anybody before, but what is the creative process like? How does that kind of help in terms of while you guys are creating it? You guys are in England, we're in the US, right? So like you guys can't just go to a coffee shop and meet up. So I wanted to know how that helps the creative process, how it kind of, I can't think of the word. Just, yeah, I guess just what it's like for the creative process for you guys.
Well,
Laura and Jen can meet up in a coffee shop, so do tell.
We can.
that's true.
We haven't.
We haven't in quite a while.
But you will, because
We
you're getting
will.
a package of this. Shameless plug.
Yeah.
Number 25.
I don't think we really have a problem with communication. I mean, yeah, Zoom is right here. We Zoom at least once a week. We email each other multiple times every day. We have our little like artist group chat, and yeah, Laura and I like
Behind
have
Shelly's back.
Sorry?
You have your infamous group chat behind Shelly's back.
We have our workers union.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Yes, we do.
Ryan, I think you bring up a really interesting question though, because back in the day, and Laura is illustrating an image of a certain character wrapped up in a fax tornado, if I'm not mistaken.
Mhm.
So back in the early days, we had the phone and we had FedEx and we had fax machines, right? So those were your means of communication. And that was good and bad. You know, using FedEx as a tool, I gained a husband. I mean, I had to charm Philip Bond all the way from New York to Worthing. You know, he was doing a regular series with me and he wasn't known as a fast artist or even an on time or almost on time artist. So I would not only call him a few times a day, I would send him these beautiful FedEx packages of like Americana and double stuffed Oreos and pictures of New York City. He hadn't visited New York City, and I think he quite liked, I think he was fascinated with America on certain levels. And so, yeah, you know, I charmed him into not only turning in the pages, but then marrying me. So I often say to people, if you want to get into comics, marry well, because it worked for me. But in terms of communicating with your team, so it was always important to pick up the phone, you know, whether, and that remains today. So whether it's through a Zoom call or whether that means a quick email or, you know, contacting the person on the team. It sounds like it's common sense, but I guarantee you, if you speak to other writers and artists in the business, they will often tell you that they don't hear from their editor. And the going comment that I would hear from other artists and writers was like, oh yeah, I hear from my editor when something's wrong, like, oh, they're confused by something that I've drawn or I've written, or got the pages, dead air, or not at all. I mean, and usually it was when the artist or the writer was chasing down a check. So that was horrifying to me. So that's another reason why I'm writing this book, because of all the things I've picked up over the years, I've picked up some practical tips in communicating with people, which I think my dad is going to be happy about, because I technically have a degree in communications and it was 40 grand and I owe him that money. So this is me giving back to my dad as well. And I'm dedicating the book to my dad because I grew up in a family business, and so many of the things that make me who I am are his fault. And sadly, he didn't give me his height, because if I had his height, I wouldn't be here. I'd be a famous tap dancer. And I hope I answered your question.
You did.
Can
Phew.
I just do a little joke?
Yes.
Shelly, when you said that FedEx was instrumental in you getting your husband, I thought you meant that that they delivered him to you.
That sounds like something you want to draw in
It
Filth
did,
Grammar.
yes.
We can talk about that.
Yeah.
We can talk about that on the secret Google meeting spot if you really do it.
Just shoot that link over.
but I'm not going to.
Well, it's just that, Ryan, you did mention specifically as part of your question the fact that you and Shelley are in the States and Laura and I are in the UK. And one of the things that does spoil about communication, even though we have like the majesty of the internet, so we're not actually speaking the same language. So I got in trouble because Shelley would keep asking me to send her roughs. And I'd be like, I am sending you my sketches. And she meant thumbnails.
Right.
And I keep getting in trouble because I still call them word balloons, and I'm not going to change my mind about this, but every single time I say this, like, Shelley sneaks into my house and like breaks one of my Clash records.
Well, first of all, I wouldn't break them. I would steal them.
True.
Flash vinyl. So look, this is an important thing. First of all, obviously, when you're dealing with people from different countries, there are not only different ways of saying things, but there are also different ways of spelling things. So there's that running commentary about how do you spell colorist? Is it COLORIST or COLOUR? And favorite. And what does chuck mean? And, you know, there are funny terms for body parts that we won't talk about because I'm modest. But what Jen is referring to is just sort of the parlance or the lexicon of comics. And I do think that in art school, you sometimes might be taught a different term and it probably means the same thing. But I'm going to also be stating the comics language as I understand it, working for a larger publisher. And fortunately, that's the part that Laura's going to be illustrating, because Jen would probably just put black X's over everything I say, including word balloon, thought bubble. I want to make one comment, though, to go back to something Ryan asked. He had mentioned hearing that in the early days, people would write notes to each other because we didn't have this high tech, video conferencing or Zoom conferencing. That is one of my favorite tips for script writers. So listen up. Whenever a writer is preparing a script for his, her, or their artist, always write an introductory note. It can be typed out, it can be in pen, and I actually write a note to my teams in red pen when I'm sending scripts. That to me is so important. It makes it personal. It shows that you're establishing a connection with the next person on the chain, and it's respectful. So it encourages the collaboration and the dynamic. So that is something that I think was one of the classic, traits that you hear about from years gone by when famous teams would work together and continue working together. And a lot of that had to do with like minds, or at least even if people didn't have the same interests or like working together, there was that mutual respect. Critical. And that's also why I insist on a weekly catch up as a team. Sometimes I'll talk to Jen on her own, sometimes I'll talk to Laura on her own, but we always come together for an hour or less every Sunday just to talk shit about everybody else in comics.
So I want to ask a little bit about the Kickstarter, the tiers. You have a bunch of different tiers. I know I selected the one where I'm going to be drawn into the book.
Ah, that was you.
Fantastic.
Because I want to be in the book. So
thank you for choosing that tier. That was
of course.
That was a pretty amazing one. Laura is going to be your new best friend, I think.
So I'm very excited. I'm very excited to be able to be drawn into the book. But you have so many awesome tiers. Like it's a bunch of different stuff. I was wondering if you guys could touch on like the tiers and stuff. And also, I know you teased the other stretch goal that I don't know if did you announce it already on the Kickstarter? You didn't, right?
We did not announce the 60K. It's going to drop today.
Okay.
And I just need to find a way to break into that secret Google group chat, because I know they came up with a really good idea that they haven't shared, that they are afraid that I'm going to reject. The greatest thing about the different levels of pledging on Filth Grammar is that there's something for every wallet. And I'm not kidding right now. The PDF is $10 and it's 160 pages. You're pretty much getting everything I know about comics, chock full on these pages, some of the best art from the 3 most amazing comic superstars breathing and drawing right now. And also, you're hearing from some of your favorites. So, you know, you're going to get some tips from Grant Morrison. You're going to get a tip from Peter Milligan. And also, Peter Milligan has agreed to edit me on a short story I'm writing about him. And that can get dangerous. You know, Peter Milligan, he can be a lot of things, but let's just say this is going to be weird. So I have asked some of my friends and colleagues in comics to contribute, and some of them I think want revenge. And I think one of them is Milligan, because if there's anyone that I've worked with over the years, I think I've worked with him more than anyone. I've edited more of his scripts than anyone else's. And I've practically gone broke from my red pen supply. So Milligan is going to be going for blood. And this is going to be funny to see. And Jen looks like she's going to like pass out. She's like, oh my God, if I'm drawing that one, I bring it. She doesn't look, she's like, oh my God, I want that now.
I'm ready.
So yeah, so we've got levels for everybody. That's $10 for the PDF. $20 is the actual soft cover. So it's $20. I mean, to me, that's like the price of taking someone out for a cocktail. So forget about the friend who already owes you money. Spend the money on yourself, $20. And not only is it a soft cover book, but it has French flaps. And I know, Ryan, you're going to put up an image of insider art because you and I were both loving those French flaps. You don't have to, don't feel like intimidated, like you have to read the book in one sitting. You can, and you might want to, but you can also use a French flap to save your place. So that's $20. Like, come on, that's nothing. From there, the tiers go up. And what we try to do with each level is offer up some necessary evils, some necessary goods, if you really want to do it the Bond way. So for me, the hardcover is everything. And again, just because I have it handy, Ryan, what's my favorite thing? Hey Amateur, I'll give you a hint. What's the best thing in the Hey Amateur book?
The ribbon.
It's the spot varnish and the
spot
ribbon.
varnish. Okay.
And the ribbon and the Smythe sewn binding.
Yes.
And that's great. That's great because of this. It allows your reading experience to be easy. It's easy on the eye. You don't have information getting lost in the creep or the gutter or the spine.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a beautiful package. And as you know, Brian, because you've picked up deliveries from the Trivision warehouse in Compton for me, Trivision is one of the best printers, full stop. They're wonderful people. They have a keen eye for detail, and it takes a little longer to get the comics made because they travel by boat from Korea to a port in LA, but it's worth it. So you're getting high gloss, beautiful printing. You're getting a thick paper stock. So this is like, the hardcover is built to last, full stop. So that's $40. And, you know, if you're a librarian or you're a retailer, we've got a special deal. And I think you know really well what that means. So you get 4 copies and you get a free hardcover. The tier after that, we start getting into the nitty gritty. So I've always wanted to show people the kind of red pen that I love, and it's a felt tip. It's not a fancy pen, but it doesn't smear. And that's really important. Otherwise, you really will get red ink on your hands or down your arm and into your sleeve, as Jen drew so well in one of our ads. So I'm going to have pens made with Filth Grammar written on them. We've got an editor's logbook, which is essentially a mini notebook. And it's intended to not only be a little area for you to write your favorite tips that you've gleaned from the book. It's going to be set up as a cover. It's a wraparound cover on the book. And it's basically going to have like a little cheat sheet of all the things that I find important to have on hand when you're editing. So I'm going to use this example right now from Heavy Rotation. It'll be a little book like a field notebook, but instead of this very cool cassette, ballpoint drawing by Jim Rugg.
Yes.
You're going to get a ruler down the side, and you're going to get other information about CMYK versus RGB. You're going to get a color wheel. You're going to get some proofreader's marks. You're going to get some beautiful illustrations. And it's all going to be the kind of thing that, like, in a pinch, can you remember the aspect ratio of a comic book? Well, I know it's 6.25. Is it by 10.85? Is it by 10.125? All the critical information you need, opacity, DPI, you're going to find those things, so that this is just your pocket cheat sheet. But don't use it if you go to art school, because I'll probably get sued.
I think all of the stuff, the swag you got, you always have awesome stuff to put in the swag bag. So I'm very excited for all the stuff that, especially the tier I got. I mean, I made sure to go as big as I could without being like, without spending too much. I don't want to piss my wife off when she sees the charge.
You don't want to go too far, so you're going to have to be evicted from your house.
Yeah.
Although if you want to live in boxes, I've got like tons of boxes here right now, because as you can see, I'm also fulfilling heavy rotation. So I can loan you a box if that's necessary.
I mean, I'll hit you up if I do need that. I'll let you know. So, everybody listening and watching, I think that if this doesn't hype you up for the project, I don't know what will. I think it's an awesome thing. It's unique. I've never seen anything like this before done in comic books. You need this in your collection. I want you guys, before we get out of here, just give some last thoughts on the book, each one of you, on why people should be excited for it, why they should back it.
I think you should back the book because it's going to give you all of the pro tips that you need to make your comics incredible. Like, even if they're already incredible, it'll make them more incredible.
I think this is a book that is going to educate you in a way that is funny and entertaining and engaging. It's going to tell you everything that you thought that you knew in a way that just completely opens your mind, and everything that you have no idea about.
I think you should just buy it for the soundtrack.
Yes.
I mean, again, thank you, all of you, for taking time to chat with me. It's been nice meeting you, Lauren, Jen, Shelly. It's always a pleasure when I get to talk to you. It's always a blast. And then for everybody listening and watching, if you guys want to drop your where people can follow you online, and then Shelly also the Kickstarter, where they can find it, and I'll drop all the links below.
Okay.
Excellent.
Shall I start?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so my Instagram is @LauraHoleIllustration, and my Twitter is @LauraHoleIllus.
We need that on a t-shirt.
I'm Imogen.mangle on Instagram. I'm imogenmangle.co.uk, and I don't have a Twitter because I like to live well.
Fair enough.
Smooth move. All right, I'm on Twitter because I have to be, and I try not to just make it like I'm P.T. Barnum in disguise. I actually love Twitter. I'm having a blast doing the promotion, or the bulk of the promotion for the campaign. You can find me at SX Bond. I'm also on Twitter at SX Bond Imprimatur, and I'm on Facebook. And I just wanted to thank you, Ryan. You have been a tireless champion, not of just my comics, but just of comics in general. And I nominate you like the king of the badass podcast. And next time we're talking more about hip hop, and we're talking about your interest in comics, and maybe I'll interview you. How about that?
I'm down. I'm always down to talk to you. So
Cool.
awesome. Well, thank you guys again. It's been a blast. And everybody listening, watching, go hit that link down below. Go back to Kickstarter. Even if it's a PDF, go get the hardcover though. The hardcover is where it's at. But if you can't afford it, at least get the soft cover. You need it in print. Don't just get the digital. And again, thank you guys. Talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.